Welcome back. Now, emerging Africa, private equity has dominated investment landscape for decades. We've seen huge venture capital deals in the tech sector. Now, in addition to that, we've seen private debt is starting to emerge as an alternative asset class, and it's looking more attractive. Folatomi Fayemi, investment specialist, 91, the fund manager of Emerging Africa Infrastructure, joins us. Good afternoon, Folatomi. It's good to have you on the show.
Good afternoon.
Now, private debt is becoming more attractive as an asset class in Africa. What is the benefit of investing with a private debt fund for infrastructure on the continent?
Yeah, I think let's take a step back a bit. We see that private debt as an asset class just across the globe has been rallying, and a lot of people have taken interest in it. I think from our perspective, if we take EIF, there's a couple of different key factors that we see that enables it to be a strong area for growth. So EIF, Emerging African Infrastructure Fund, is a blended finance vehicle. So when an investor goes and puts money into EIF, you have the advantage of a strong track record. So as you said, 20 years of work and investments we've done. You also have the ability to have a diversified portfolio as well as a strong team, and you end up having assets, quality assets, which have good and strong cash flows, as well as mitigated risk. Because what ends up happening is you have a risk that is perceived as higher than it actually is. In fact, our portfolio has a loss ratio of that of an investment grade portfolio, so of a triple B, but with sovereign risk baked in at B-rated assets. So there's a bit of a dislocation that allows you to have a strong risk-adjusted return.
Well, you talked about risk right now, and I'm just looking at you. The private debt cuts across different sectors. You can give money for energy, transportation, agriculture, mining, and so on. But the currency risk that you learn in mostly USD and the euro, is that not a factor for African countries that are trying, drowning in debt from, high interest rates?
I think that's a very good point. EIF actually does not only do hard currency lending, so USD, euro, but we actually also lend in local currency. So we've actually done a couple of local currency bonds, for example, and we've also done that whether it's in the ZOF region, so that's in West Africa, or even in Kenyan shilling. So there is the optionality. Yes, high interest rates is something that concerns every investor, but I think that that's not something that's really focused on Africa alone. I think across the globe, high interest rates is affecting many emerging markets. So I wouldn't say it's a phenomenon that's deterring investors and African countries only. I think the high interest rates are just making it just a generally tougher environment to carry out deals.
And so if this is an issue, definitely would have some challenges in attracting capital, especially if they don't get return on their investments. What are some of the barriers that you find for attracting such investments into Africa?
I think we went over it a bit, but from my perspective, I think risk perception is quite high. So there's a view that if you come into Africa and you're doing investments on the continent, you have the risk of losing your money. In actuality, that's not really factual. We see that, the loss ratios on African infrastructure are actually much lower than rest of the emerging markets regions, and it's just slightly higher than that of developed markets. Many investors, when they come into Africa, you're working with strong, reputable sponsors. You're working with bankable contracts and bankable projects, which then ensures that the risk mitigation is there. In fact, if we take a step further in the amount of renewable energy deals that we've done, the EIF, over its more than 20-year history, have done over 35 power projects. And of the over 35 that we've done, we've actually never lost an investment. So you have lower loss ratios. So I think, investing in vehicles like EIF are different ways to actually solve that problem. I think the barrier is there, but I also believe that there are solutions in place with blended finance vehicles and as well as private debt vehicles that can actually help solve that issue.
I do understand that this private debt, you work with businesses, private businesses. I want to know if government involvement are at play here. Do you collaborate with the government to get this done?
Yes, in fact. So many of the projects that we do, the power project, let's say a solar project, we do that under a PPP framework, so a private and public partnership framework, which effectively you work alongside off-takers and private entities to carry out a deal. So many of the projects that we do are like that, and that's actually the preferred way for investors to invest in such project finance.
So what can be done? We want to know, how do you expect the landscape for investment in energy transition, because it's now the in thing. We're seeing the goals for 2030. Those targets are there, and Africa seems to be far behind. What do you expect the landscape for energy transition in Africa to? How do you see developing in the next couple of years?
I see the landscape developing in a very positive light. We're very high on it, and we think that many investors, as you correctly stated, are rushing and trying to accelerate investments into the energy transition. In the context of Africa, we see that the continent actually has the opportunity to leapfrog in terms of technology being invested in compared to other markets. So we're seeing opportunities in CNI. So an example could be a flour mill in the north of Nigeria. Before, used to have to rely on the grid to get its power. Now you have a more efficient way by signing a power purchase agreement directly with the solar PV plant, and that would enable you to have cleaner energy and a lower cost. So we're seeing opportunities there. We're also seeing opportunities in the EV market. And finally, we still think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity in just general renewables, whether it be solar, hydro, wind, or biomass. And reasons for this is because Africa as a continent is blessed with so many resources that would enable for that type of investment.
Thank you so much, Olatomi Fayemi, Investment Specialist 91, for sharing your perspective on Business Incorporated.
Thank you so much.